With the release of version 2.3, the meta of Honkai Star Rail has seen considerable change. The incredible characters from previous version may not be as good right now, but they are these group of characters that no matter what the version may be, they'll always be very usable. And today, I'll be bringing you an analysis of these characters that has withstood the test of time and has been very useful throughout all the versions, and that you should build them. And firstly, with a disclaimer, these are all my opinions. Feel free to disagree, but I hope you keep it civil. And enough yapping, let's start. The first character on the list, which I would argue to be the most timeless, resistant to power creep character of all time, is Ranmei. Now, where do I even start with this mad scientist? She has been around for quite a few versions and even has a rerun banner right now. So if you really want to start strong, you want to get this character today. The thing that makes Ranmei so broken is that she's one of the few characters that can apply AOE buff to your entire allies, giving them extra damage. And in the same vein, she's able to buff your allies with something that's very generally useful named Weakness Break Efficiency Increase. Now, if you don't understand, this means that when your allies attack someone of the correct weakness, they will shred their toughness bar by a little bit. With Ranmei's buff, you're gonna shred even more than usual. And considering Honkai Star Rail is a game that has a very generic mechanic that utilizes weakness break in most of the cases, Ranmei that specifically targets this mechanic that allows your allies to just weakness break more means that under most circumstances, unless the enemy is straight up immune to weaknesses, you will always have an upper hand with a Ranmei in your team. And not only that she helps you break your enemies, the moment you do break your enemy, she even delays them significantly. During when the enemy's weakness is broken, they can't move at all, and the moment they get delayed and pushed back by Ranmei, you just get a whole extra window of damage without being attacked by the enemy. That is incredibly busted. And if anything, currently the meta is skewed towards a break meta, which is perfect for someone like Ranmei that helps your team break a lot. But do not misunderstand, she's not only really good at break-centric teams, she's still very strong in any teams at all, considering just how universal her buff is. You do more damage, number one, who doesn't want that? You break the enemies easier, which 90% of the time you want to break your enemy. And that makes Ranmei one of the most timeless characters that is nearly resistant to power creep because she is the power creep. If you get a chance of obtaining her, which she has a rerun better right now, go ahead and grab her. You have a way easier time for the long run even. And moving on with the second character, here we have Fu Xuan. Now, this character is considered a veteran now with how many versions she's been around. And even with every version, with every update of tier list, you can see Fu Xuan still being one of the top sustains of all time. Now, the trademark of a good sustain character is the ability to keep your team alive, which Fu Xuan is second to none in terms of that. With a lot of other healers like say Huo or Natasha or Lynx, the boss can still suddenly just gang up and one-shot your ally. Now with Fu Xuan, how she works is that during the duration of her E, or we call it Matrix of Prescience, she'll take a really big chunk of damage away from any ally and apply it on her own HP. That means your ally has such a low chance at being ganged on and just explode out of nowhere, even though they're like DPSs with very fragile defensive stats. Now you might be worried that Fu Xuan herself might be taking too much damage, especially with like AOE attacks, right? She'll be redirecting way too much damage on herself, but her talent allows herself to heal a lot the moment her HP drop below 50. It doesn't solve the fact that she could get one shot if a really strong AOE attack hit you, but that's not really common in the game right now. You rarely see it. Maybe in high content GNG you would, but generally speaking, you will never get one shot with a Fu Xuan in your team. You'll heal up the moment Fu Xuan gets low. Your team will never take pretty much any damage at all. And on top of all of that, Fu Xuan has an instance of crowd control immunity for your entire team the moment she uses her E. And that is what you want from a sustain, preventing yourself from getting controlled, preventing yourself from dying, all of which Fu Xuan can do very well. And on top of just being a defensive beast that can keep your team alive for a long time, she even helps out in terms of offensive capabilities of your team. During her E, which is so broken already, redirecting all the damage to herself, she also buffs her allies with 12% crit. That helps out a lot of crit DPSs, especially on the hot path where they really want to crit every time. Protect your entire team, giving you some immunity to crowd control as well, and even helps in terms of buffing your offensive capability. Fu Xuan is truly the jack of all trades. Even though the meta right now certainly favors break FM more than crit DPSs, but it doesn't mean that crit DPSs are just bad now. And even then, whatever the case is, the fact that Fu Xuan will protect your team from being one-shot and dying most of the time makes her truly valuable. A character that I can see always in the top tiers of sustain, no matter what the meta is, no matter what the version is. Pretty timeless character. And enough about our Quantum Gremlin, we're gonna move on to a 4-star character that's pretty timeless, which is Pella. Now this may be surprising, but hear me out here. Pella specializes in AOE Defense Reduction, and Defense Reduction is something that nobody would ever complain to have, right? When given Pella resolution shines like Perzo's Sweat-like code, she's able to add even more defense reduction, making her good against AOE enemies or against even singular bosses, considering the amount of debuffs and defense stress that she can bring. And the thing about defense reduction is that it's a debuff buff on the enemy, and it straight up translates to you do more damage to them. So it doesn't matter if you're a break DPS, it doesn't matter if you're like dot DPS or crit DPS. If the enemy has defense reduction, you're gonna do more damage to them, making a defense reducer a really umbrella term debuff that will help you in terms of damage, making them already pretty good to have. And considering Pela has a kit that really helps her get energy as well, or you can use her as a skill point generator too, it makes her such a versatile character that the moment you don't know who to put, you know what, Pela's probably gonna help you. But here's the question though, why wouldn't I include Silverwolf for this list as well? And the reason being, Silverwolf is really good in terms of defense reducing. In fact, she is better than Pela at reducing defense for one enemy. Pela has a kit that mainly targets AOE with her ulti and defense reduction, and still she can handle singular bosses as well. That means Divergent Universe, Apocalyptic Shadow, Golden Gear, Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, Pela can be fit into every mode and still be pretty good. Which is why it's important for me to explain, I'm not saying Silverwolf is worse than Pela, I'm not saying Silverwolf is bad at all. Silverwolf is irreplaceable in some teams, in fact, especially like Moto Quantum teams where we really want to get the quantum weakness in. But I am saying Pela is pretty timeless, where if you invest in Pela, you'll rarely ever fight a case at all where Pela's bad. In Silverwolf's case though, if you're fighting like 3 big bosses or elites at the same time, she'll have issues getting her defense reduction in all of them. Which is why I think Pela is more timeless compared to say Silverwolf. Not to say who's better, it's just that Pela is more versatile and more generally useful. If you're a free to play with not a lot of character options, Pela is a really good character to invest in, considering she's also just a 4-star. You probably own her, which is why I put Pela on this list. Certainly one of the characters that's never been really power crept, holding her own as one of the strongest defense reducer even till today. And up next, we have a bundle of 2 characters. We've got number 1 Bronya and number 2 Sparkle. Now I'll categorize these 2 together because of the one main thing that they do. It's the action advance. Now certainly Sparkle can give you skill point and a lot of damage boost as well. Same with Bronya, right? In fact, Sparkle just gives more value to you as well with the skill point compared to Bronya. But that's not the main point. The main point is that these 2 characters share the same function of giving your DPSs more turns. Now in a turn-based game like Honkai Star Rail, getting more turns is always good. So with Bronya, that's a character that since day 1 is pretty strong, and only currently she's been a little bit replaced by the likes of Sparkle. But the fact that her main function is to consistently get your DPS extra turns, same with Sparkle, right? Makes these 2 characters the characters that you can use in any team, except for a minute amount for someone like Clara that doesn't want extra turns. Or at least not that much. You have to use your brain if you want to pair them together, right? But still, generally speaking, almost every DPS in the game, every damage dealer in the game would not complain if you give them extra turns or action advance, which Bronya and Sparkle can give. Which is why I put them both here. If you have a Bronya or a Sparkle, and if you build them up, you're gonna realize that in most cases, you can use them if you really have no other choice. They're gonna work fine for you. In Pure Fiction, Memory of Chaos, Golden Gear, whatever the mode may be, getting an extra turn for your allies will never be a bad thing. Of course, there's gonna be fringe cases that there is. Maybe you are like at the brink of death with low HP and you have dots on you. Of course, you don't want to get an extra turn that way. But in most cases, you wouldn't complain at extra turns, which is why I think Bronya and Sparkle will be one of the more power creep resistant characters for the fact that they have really good action advance that can be used consistently. And ladies and gentlemen, that will be all for today. These are the few characters that I think are pretty resistant to power creep. They're not totally immune to it, especially like say Bronya and Sparkle, with the case of Bronya being half replaced by Sparkle, yeah? But if you don't have Sparkle, you can still always use a Bronya. There are gonna be cases where you wouldn't want to use her. I say if you pair with Imbibitor and don't have enough skill points, right? Or even in the same case, you can still use Bronya with a basic E cycle, which actually makes her neutral in terms of skill point usage, and it still works out fine for you even if you want to pair with Imbibitor Lune. And for every other character that I've listed on this list, again, these are all my opinion and from what I've experienced so far. I'm not saying any other characters are bad. I'm saying they may be good or bad depending on the scenario, but these other characters are just generally decent, or in the case of say Ron May, broken. Invest in these characters and I don't think you regret it. And that'll be all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Take care.